listen to this beautiful music. Doesn't this sound like something Chopin would have written? Maybe something Schumann might have composed, or Schubert, one of those romantic composers. I mean, listen to this. It's so romantic. It's so lyrical. But it's not Chopin. It's not Schumann. It's not Schubert. It's not Lizst. So, well, who wrote this? Well, I'll tell you in a minute. You know, from time to time, I like to talk about composers that you may have never heard of. Everyone knows about Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. Everybody knows about these famous composers. But what do you know about Karl Czerny, or Moscheles, or Scriabin, or Korngold, or Salieri? Well, these are great composers, all. But the more well-known composers get all the publicity. So what about these guys? They lived in the shadows of these famous composers, and many of them are largely forgotten today. So what I'd like to do in this video is we're going to take a quick look at the life and work of Karl Czerny. Now, he may actually be the best known of the obscure composers. Czerny is mainly known for his extensive series of technical piano exercises, several of which I struggled through when I was taking lessons. But he was also capable of writing some beautiful lyrical music. And of course, he wrote the music that you were hearing at the beginning of this video. But here's an example of one of his pieces that maybe is not as beautiful. I learned this piece many years ago, but I usually don't play it for anyone when I'm asked to play something. No one would mistake this for Chopin. However, this piano exercise and hundreds more like it have been part of countless piano students' lessons since they were first written. Karl Czerny was born in Vienna in 1791. His father was of Czech origin. His mother was Moravian. And when he was growing up, some people believe that his parents spoke Czech with him. Anyway, he came from a musical family. His grandfather was a violinist at Nymburk near Prague, and his father, Wenzel, what a name, Wenzel, he was an oboist, an organist, and a pianist. Now, when Czerny was 6 months old, his father took a job as a piano teacher at a Polish manor, and so the family moved to Poland, and then they lived there until they returned to Vienna in 1795. Now, as it is with many composers, Czerny was a child prodigy. He began playing the piano at age 3 and composing at age 7. His first piano teacher was his father, who taught him Bach and Haydn and Mozart, and he began performing piano recitals in his parents' home. And he made his first public performance in 1800, and he played Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 24. In 1801, there was a famous Czech violinist named Wenzel Krumpholz. He was also a composer, and he wanted to present Czerny at the home of Ludwig van Beethoven. And so Beethoven said, "Hey, Czerny, play my Pathetique Sonata." Well, he didn't call it that, but Czerny played for Beethoven, and Beethoven was really impressed with this 10-year-old pianist and accepted him as a pupil. So Czerny studied with Beethoven from 1804, from 1800 until 1804, and then a little sporadically after that. And he really admired Beethoven's ability to improvise and his fingering and how quickly he could play scales and trills. Czerny's autobiography and letters that he wrote talk about details of Beethoven's life during this period. In fact, Czerny was one of the first ones to report that Beethoven was beginning to have problems with his hearing, that he was going deaf. And he wrote about this several years before everybody else learned about it. Beethoven actually asked Czerny to play the premiere of his Piano Concerto No. 1 in 1806. And in 1812, when Czerny was 21, he gave the premiere of Beethoven's Emperor Piano Concerto. That's Piano Concerto No. 5. Czerny wrote that his musical memory enabled him to play virtually all of Beethoven's piano works by heart. That's an amazing thing when you think about it. to be able to just know by heart all that amazing music that Beethoven wrote. And indeed, Czerny stayed friends with Beethoven throughout his life. And he even gave piano lessons to Beethoven's nephew, Karl. Now, not only was Czerny an accomplished pianist, but he also became a very successful teacher, beginning at the age of 15. He based his teaching method on the teaching methods of Beethoven and another teacher named Clementi, and he taught up to 12 lessons a day in the homes of Viennese nobility. And he had many famous pupils, including Stefan Heller, Thalberg, and you may not know who some of these people are, but we'll talk about them in future videos. The father of Franz Liszt brought his son to Czerny. And here's what Czerny recalled about Liszt. He said he was a pale, sickly-looking child who, while playing, he swayed about on the stool as if he were drunk. His playing was irregular, untidy, confused, and he threw his fingers quite arbitrarily all over the keyboard. But notwithstanding, I was astonished at the talent nature had bestowed upon him. And so Franz Liszt became Czerny's most famous pupil. Czerny trained him with the works of Beethoven and Bach and so on. And in fact, the Liszt family lived in the same street in Vienna as Czerny. And Czerny was so impressed by Liszt that he taught him free of charge. Liszt was able later to repay this favor by introducing Czerny's music at many of his pair's recitals. Czerny also arranged the introduction of Franz Liszt to Beethoven. Now, Beethoven really didn't like child prodigies, but he was sufficiently impressed with the young Liszt that, as the story goes, kissed him on the forehead. After 1840, Czerny devoted himself exclusively to composition. He wrote a large number of piano solo exercises for the development of pianistic technique, and these were designed to work with young students who were just getting started, all the way up to the needs of the most advanced virtuoso. Czerny died in Vienna at the age of 66. He never married, lifelong bachelor. He had no near relatives. Now, he had become quite wealthy, and so he willed his fortune to charities, including an institution for the deaf. His housekeeper also received some money, and also he willed some funds to the Society of Friends of Music in Vienna. Let's talk a little bit about his work. He composed a very large number of pieces, more than 1,000. He wrote piano sonatas, he wrote opera theme arrangements, he wrote variations, masses, choral music, symphonies, concertos, songs, string quartets, and other types of chamber music. But of course, he is best known for the large number of piano exercises that he wrote, collected in one book called The School of Velocity, and he also wrote another book called The Art of Finger Dexterity. Now, from the time of Czerny's death until the end of the 20th century, there have been many negative views about his work. Robert Schumann, the famous Romantic composer, was also a music critic, and in his publication, The New Musical Gazette, he wrote of Czerny's Opus 424, "It would be difficult to find a failure of imagination greater than that of Czerny." Now, Franz Liszt, he included Czerny compositions in his repertoire and also dedicated a piece that he wrote called 12 Transcendental Etudes to Czerny. But even Liszt, in an 1852 letter, he wrote that it is a pity that by a too superabundant productiveness he has necessarily weakened himself and has not gone on further on the road of his first sonata, Opus 7 in A-flat major, and of other works of that period which I rate very highly as compositions of importance, beautifully formed and having the noblest tendency. So basically what Liszt is saying is that Czerny started out really good but never really progressed as a composer. Now, other musicians like Brahms and Stravinsky, they admired Czerny as a composer. In fact, Stravinsky said, "As to Czerny, I have been appreciating the full-blooded musician in him more than the remarkable pedagogue." A pedagogue, that's basically a master teacher. Now, you can find quite a few of Czerny's piano exercises on YouTube, and they make for interesting listening. But I would encourage you also to seek out his normal, his serious compositions. For example, his piano concerto in A minor, opus 214. So anyway, that's a brief introduction to the life and work of this neglected composer. So I hope you'll take the time to look up some of his music and tell me what you think in the comments section. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe. I always appreciate that. It helps the channel a lot. You can also support my work on Patreon, and I will leave the links below. I look forward to speaking to you in the next one.